Welcome to Clinician's Corner. Here, Molly and I will provide you with evidence based insights and practical tools for addressing ultra processed food addiction. This segment is designed for both individuals navigating recovery and professionals supporting clients through the treatment process. We will be bridging personal experience with clinical expertise to enhance understanding about the treatment of food addiction and the many pathways to recovery.
Each episode explores key topics such as the neurobiology of addiction, strategies for sustainable recovery, behavioral interventions, and the impact of diet trauma. We'll also discuss practical approaches for fostering self-compassion, managing setbacks, and building individualized, empowering eating practices.
Whether you are in recovery or a clinician working with clients, Clinician's Corner offers research-informed perspectives, real-world applications, and therapeutic tools to support long-term healing.
Join us the first Friday of each month for thoughtful conversations that equip you with the knowledge and strategies needed for meaningful progress in ultra-processed food addiction recovery.
Expert insights,
practical tools,
transforming recovery one conversation at a time. Hello, Molly. So good to see you.
Hey, so good to see you. I really hate that we're not together in the same place anymore.
I know what most people, well, maybe they will know because we probably talked about it on last Clinician's Corner, but we just got to spend the whole month almost together running two retreats, and Vera actually came to both of them, which was awesome. And we thought as a way to like bring listeners kind of into the journey, we would talk about one of the topics that we covered in the liberation retreat, but that will also be in our liberation modules. And we think it's so prevalent with ultra processed food use disorder. And it's also plays a big role in, I think, for a lot of individuals with food use disorder who live in larger bodies.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
So
let's let them in. What are we
yeah,
talking about
so
today?
today we're going to talk about stigma and we're going to talk about shame and like dun dun, put on the heavy, right? These, this
Cue the
is some,
music.
yeah, this is some tough stuff. And let me tell you, participants at the retreat felt the same way. But I think they also left with a new understanding and also that the goal is not to live a life without shame because that's not actually possible, but it's to acknowledge it and it's to notice when it shows up and to like not prevent shame from letting us live our life. So we started with a bit of psychoeducation, and I will just kind of launch into that now. So most people think stigma is kind of a feeling or a social attitude, but it actually has a really fascinating history. So for thousands of years, humans have marked certain groups as quote unquote others. And so the word stigma comes from ancient Greece, and a stigma was literally a physical mark or burn or brand placed on slaves, criminals, or people that were considered socially undesirable. And the mark kind of served as this like public signal. It told everyone this person is different. This person is less than, and this person does not belong among us. And so that mark wasn't about identification, it was about social status. It was about shame. It was about communicating someone's worth had been diminished in many ways. And so now stigma has kind of evolved, but it hasn't disappeared. So today we don't brand people with hot irons, but what we do brand them with is labels. So
Mhm.
people with food addiction, or people that maybe are in larger bodies, they get labeled as, addict. Maybe it's alcoholic. Maybe it's obese or fat, failure, weak. lazy.
Lazy.
Yes, yes, broken. And the marks have moved from skin to language, and language is incredibly powerful. So when society kind of repeatedly attaches these negative stereotypes to a group of people, those labels begin to shape our opportunities. They shape our relationships. They shape our healthcare, our employment, maybe even public policy, but mostly how people see themselves. And this is the process we know as stigma. And research on addiction and shame describes stigma as this process of devaluing or stereotyping or socially excluding people based on particular characteristics or conditions. And so those people with food addiction, maybe binge eating, eating disorders, stigma's everywhere. And the message is if you just had more willpower, or if you just cared more, if you were more disciplined. And these messages really reduce the complex biological, physical, psychological, social, environmental realities of substance use disorder into these moral judgments. And after this morality has taken place, then there's this second layer that kind of emerges for most people. The external stigma becomes internal. And
Mhm.
so now the voices that used to be outside now start speaking from within. So instead of people think I'm fat or I'm a failure, it becomes I am fat and a failure. Or, in my own personal experience with alcohol use disorder, it wasn't that people think I'm broken because I'm a drunk, but it is I am broken and I am a drunk. And what we did as one of the exercises during the retreat is I had them write down on sticky notes kind of 5 things that shame had kind of, or stigma messages that they had received about themselves. And so they wrote down 5. And then I said, I want you to stick them on you. And this was really dramatic because what I did was I stuck mine, which was like, I'm a drunk and I'm not trustworthy over my eyes. And this is how I see the world. And this is what I'm looking through these lenses all the time. And so what's happening is it's no longer about our behaviors. This is now about our identity. And so for people with food addiction, suffering isn't just about the food. It's this belief that we have that we are fundamentally flawed. And that's why shame is so dangerous, not because it hurts, and it does hurt, but because it really changes what we believe is possible. So now shame is telling us don't even try. You'll fail again. You don't deserve better. And who do you think you are? So shame doesn't just wound people, it really shrinks their lives and they stop living life and start isolating because they lose that lens of possibility. And that then reinforces their coping mechanisms.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's this really like devious kind of process that plays out, right? So I think a lot of these things maybe start out well-intentioned. Maybe thousands of years ago it was well-intentioned. Maybe, today even these things are well-intentioned. Um, but the impact
Mhm.
is really devastating for the people who are on the receiving end of it. And it makes sense. We are wired to judge,
Yep.
right? Because we have to
And
figure
to
out who's
compare to
to
see
compare,
where
right?
we
Because
fit
to see
in.
where do
Yeah.
we sit, who's safe, who's not safe, how do I make myself safe, all of those things. And so I don't want to like shame that piece of it. Like you're biologically wired for that. But what I'm hearing you say, and it's so interesting as you're like sharing, what for me, I get to that internalized part, like the externalized stigma, whatever. Like people are going to do what people do. And there's only so much. that we can do to kind of run interference on that, right? We can try
Yep.
to educate, we can try to push back, we can whatever. But at the end of the day, people have very good reasons for making the decisions that they do. So they probably have very good reasons for stigmatizing or othering people or groups of people.
Hmm.
The internalized place is where I get all sorts of fired up
Hmm.
because because so much of this happens pre-verbal. So much of this, we are like soaking in this, marinating in this like goop of social norms, cultural norms,
Yes.
whatever it might be. And so it becomes internalized. I was just saying this to somebody else the other day where it's like, our parents do such a good job of getting that in there from the time 0 to 7, right? Because then 7 is the first pruning, roughly, of our right neurons and different brain structures going, like changes are happening. But they do such a good job that now at 43, I can sit here and there are things that I won't do because I hear that voice
Mm.
literally in my head, right? You can't wear that. You can't do that thing, whatever. Like there were lots of messages, but it's that
Yeah.
internalized place where I get fired up because that's where we can actually do the work. We
Hmm.
can't, right? Like, I mean, we can do some stuff externally, but the impact is going to be so much bigger when we can do it for ourselves with our internalized stigma and our internalized shame.
Right. And I think that was what we started to work on when we were at the retreat, right? Because what happened was our survival strategies, so our attempts to cope with loneliness, trauma, overwhelm, stress, grief, disconnection, maybe even pain, um, often using food or using behaviors, right? And all like those were originally these survival strategies. Now they've been mislabeled as character flaws.
Right.
So, but these are behaviors. And although these behaviors are maybe no longer serving us, it doesn't mean we're defective.
No.
And that's the heart of the conversation I think we need to discuss today is what if shame was never the whole story, right? What if the problem isn't that we're broken? What if we've just been carrying this stigma that was placed there by culture, family, diet culture, by misunderstanding where this came from? And what if recovery isn't about erasing that, but it's about recognizing what has happened and how maybe it's standing in the way now of me living my life?
Right.
Because I think if we are putting ourselves in the marginalized group, right, then I think, are sometimes feeling stuck and we're feeling like there's no way out of that because it is who we are. We were
So,
born this
oh, I
way.
was gonna say, okay, so back it up. So when you say when we put ourselves in the marginalized group, you mean like when we over-identify with a label
Right.
or a
So
set of
the
labels?
external stigma becomes the internal stigma, becomes the
Yeah.
self stigma.
Yes.
Right? And so now it is, and yes, I may be experiencing, like you said, discrimination in healthcare, maybe discrimination in relationships. If weight stigma is there too, there is going to be even another layer to it. And the tragic irony, I think, of all of this is shame is often the prescribed solution, right? Our culture says if you felt worse about yourself, maybe you change. And this is even in addiction, right?
Yeah.
Let them hit bottom, right?
Yeah.
It has to be bad enough.
Right.
But this isn't how human beings work. Shame rarely creates sustainable change. If it did, none of us would be here. We've all
Right.
been shamed enough. Shame creates more hiding. It
Yeah.
was the only reason I never asked for help. It creates this isolation and it creates self-criticism. It creates that inner critic. The other thing it creates is hopelessness. And then shame drives the very behaviors we're trying to escape.
Yeah.
So, hearing things like, like you need more willpower, or you'd be beautiful if you'd lost weight, or don't you care about your health? Like eventually those voices move inside and that becomes our inner critic and our inner narrator. And we begin to think like, I am disgusting. There is
Yeah.
something wrong with me. And
Yeah.
so now we postpone our lives, right? Maybe we don't date. Maybe we don't travel. Maybe now I'm somebody who's not even going to go swimming. I'm not going to take any photos, is something I heard a lot of at the retreat. Maybe I'm going to even postpone volunteering. And because we're postponing like our entire lives. And
Mhm.
so now we don't even feel like we're worthy of buying clothes that
Yeah.
make us feel good. We postpone joy, right?
Yeah.
And we tell ourselves the story is I will start living once my body changes or once I fix, quote unquote, my food
Yeah.
addiction.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh gosh, everything you're saying is so true. And as you're saying all of those things, what it does for me is it reminds me that like the very thing we're going to talk about is a big ask. And I just want to like say that out loud because anybody who's listening, I don't want you to hear this and think, "Oh, Molly and Clarissa are talking about this thing and it's so easy for them." And whatever. Like cuz I know I can go to that place when I hear people. I was
Yeah.
literally listening to somebody else who was saying, if I can do it, anybody can. And I'm like, I really hate that
I
sentiment because
hate
that's
that.
not true.
Yes.
It's so not true. We can
Yeah,
only
because
do
they'll
what we
be like,
can do.
if I can do it, anyone can, because I had it the worst,
Because
is
I had it the worst.
also something
Exactly,
they'll
exactly.
say.
And I'm just like, actually, oh, can we not do that? So just
Yeah.
to like keep in mind as you continue to listen to this conversation, it is a big ask because everything that Clarissa is saying is so much more than just like a simple reframe, right? There's because this is like deeply ingrained stuff. And as you're saying these things, I all I can think is like, yeah, and because I was that person too, that I was like, but society says I'm not worthy unless I make so much money. Society says I'm not worthy unless I fit a
I'm
certain beauty
married.
ideal, right?
Yes.
Like
I
a
have
relationship
kids.
ideal. All
Yes.
of those things. And the work though is like literally asking people to take a look at those norms and values being put on you and do those actually fit your personal values, morals, belief system? Because some of you may find that like conventional norms are actually not something that work for you, and that's going to be a lot of decentering and breaking things down and unlearning and new learning and all of those things, and it's not going to be accomplished in a 60-minute podcast, which we are well
Right.
aware of, but I want to just plant that seed for anybody
Yeah,
listening.
and I think like you're naming something really important because like some of this work means going back and exploring the moments in your life when people said things to you that you're still carrying today. I'll still remember like this one guy who I broke up with, and he's like, I've never dated anyone with more cellulite than you. And like,
Whoa.
yeah, right. And
But
like,
like, what a thing to say! Like that, as a man dating a woman who's as phenomenal. And I mean, I may be biased, folks, but I don't care. Like Clarissa is an amazing human being. So if he all the only thing he has to attack is like a body thing. Also, like, what a weird notice as a dude. Like, what? Anyway, anyway, right? I'm just
whatever,
like,
like I was, in breaking up with him. So I'm
yeah.
sure
Well,
like
sure. So he was
hurt
hurt
people.
people.
I had, but it didn't mean that that wasn't there. And then it became a
He
thing
knew
that
how to
I
get you
focused
though.
on,
That's the thing is
right?
he knew that that would be a button for you. And when that shit becomes, sorry for the swear. Whoa,
Yeah.
see, this is how I mean I get passionate about this stuff. When he weaponized something that he knew was maybe something that you were less secure about. And maybe he didn't know that about you personally, but like
Yeah.
just being a woman, right?
Yeah.
He was just really good at guessing that. And clearly, whether you let him know in that moment or not, like you said, to this day, you still remember that. That's
Yeah.
that's a lot.
Well, and it's so interesting because we also, when we had this self-stigma, shame for some of us can be an ally. So, what also came up during the group was I kind of need this inner critic feedback because
Mm.
that's what motivates me. And then that's the belief. So, if my shame is my ally, right? Because at the time I would have said, well, once he mentioned it, I learned about what I had to work on and what I had to improve. And so, that was one of the things that got me out the door and doing like the walk in the day or lifting weights or whatever it is. And so that's where it can become really interesting in exploring where have you even taken shame on as your ally to say that in some ways these things have helped me keep pushing and, making myself be better. If I just was more permissive with
But
myself, I would maybe just let myself go, is often something that we hear.
sure. But I want to push on that just for a second,
No, I
right?
want
This
you to
belief.
push
Yeah,
on
yeah,
it.
yeah. No, I know. Right. So this idea that you took shame on as an ally, and I don't know if you're just using that as as an example or if that's literally how you did it. I'm not sure. I don't know that you and I have had this exact conversation before. But um but what that does is, okay, so let's assume, because yes, I think that we can all kind of take constructive criticism. So when you say inner
Right.
critic, like, yes, I think that there can be that inner critic as long as they're going to be constructive. But if it's just going to be like to shame us to again get us to comply, that's
Well, and I
problematic.
think I have to give you more information so you
Yeah,
understand what I'm
maybe,
saying when
yeah,
I say that is not all shame is unhealthy. So there
right.
can be healthy shame in terms of maybe even thinking about my DUIs. We want shame to be there to be like, it is not okay to drink and drive,
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
And if you feel a level of shame when you do that, that is appropriate,
Right. No,
right?
absolutely,
That
absolutely. So
that
there are like
is,
these, yeah.
and we know with a lot of the research that was out there, when we talk about relationships, and there was a lot of research done in couples relationships, and if one spouse cheated, and if they show an appropriate amount of shame for that behavior, then repair and reconciliation is more likely
Yeah.
in the relationship. So shame can like
Can have those.
really,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like it is, but it's so nuanced, right? And so I think that's the other thing that I want to be really careful about because when we think about this example of this man saying to you, well,
Yeah.
you have more cellulite than anybody I've ever seen, or however he said that. And then if we take that information and we're like, okay, you know what? Cool, I'm just gonna work harder on that or whatever. That works for I mean, so like for you that worked. For
No, it
you,
worked for a while.
oh,
Okay.
okay. Okay.
I'm not, but that was when shame was my ally.
Ah, got it.
And
Because I
so
was gonna
if you
say,
asked me in that
yeah,
moment, oh, just love your body, I would have told you, go, what
right,
yourself
right, yeah,
because that is where some of this work can be really challenging because some
right,
of us are so in it still that
right.
we can't see out of it. And that's where shame might be an ally to us.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I think that there's the other piece too, where we feel shame because we've been shamed for that all of our lives, especially as women,
Yeah,
and seeing this in social media and the airbrushed photos, all the things, whatever it might be. And that's also an opportunity to, instead of saying like, wow, like I really need to work harder on myself, it also could be like that could be true. And it could also be true that that belief system actually doesn't work for us. So, like, if somebody had said
right.
that to me, like, there was a time in my life where I would have been like, I know, like, tell me something I don't know. I'll work harder. Blah. But the today me is like, actually, I don't center that kind of stuff. Like, I have zero interest in, like, I don't care what a man thinks about my body. I don't care what a woman thinks about. I actually don't care. I don't care because I don't center other people's opinions of my body over my own. Now, does that mean I'm perfect in it? No, like I still have vulnerable moments and I still get zinged for sure. I want to say that piece of it. But that's where we can actually take that. energy of somebody attempting to throw shade, right? Or shame
Hmm.
us. And we can turn it around and we can check in with ourselves and go, wait a minute, is that actually mine or is that them? Is that them telling on themselves that they have insecurities about those things or those are their limitations and they're putting it on us? And does that even matter? Like, if I don't care to adhere to the thin white ideal of beauty, whatever, then because I'm actually never going to fit that standard. Like there's just no way genetically I'm ever going to fit that standard. And there's one part of me that could run myself into the ground, really, really trying and
Hmm.
destroying my mental health in the meantime.
Hmm.
Or I can try to embrace this other way where it's like, actually, I don't fit those standards. So then who says I have to? Who are they and why do they
Hmm.
think they know kind of deal? So I think like there's so much room in all of this. And there are ways where shame can, like you said, it can be the intention behind it, I think has always been, again, like for the better good, quote unquote, whoever they think they again, why do they think they know? I don't know. But
Hmm.
obviously in the case of like a DUI, that's something different,
Yeah.
right? That's more than one person's life at risk here. But when we think about body and food, right? Like these things that
Hmm.
we particularly deal with these days, why would somebody say that? Why?
Yeah.
That's what I'm genuinely curious. I am
I know.
genuinely
I
curious.
feel
I'm
like
not
it's
saying that
funny
to
that
be
I've
mean.
never even told you this
I'm
before.
genuine. No, you have, no, and I'm genuinely curious. I'm like, I'm just like, as an observer, I'm just like, what would make him say that?
Right. But then the thing is, I would have never told anyone that that was said to me because then I would think everyone examined my cellulite. And B, it was an external comment made to me that I internalized that then I bought cellulite cream for the next 20 years.
Right.
It was something that I did. And maybe I did stop. Like if I was going to wear a swimsuit, maybe I wore a cover up. But I wouldn't go to the pool party and I wouldn't do, and this, I was in like my, I don't know, early 30s or whatever. But that's what we're talking about today,
Yeah.
is how
Right.
now this, like something, a comment, something has been made, and why it's important we explore this stuff about
Yes.
how these things have affected our lives and has
Right.
it made us stop living our lives in terms of like our values. So, you know me, I'm somebody who loves to travel and like,
Yeah.
that would have been something maybe at that time that would have made me stop traveling or made me stop connecting with people or dating or, laughing, loving, and living life. And those are just part of being human. Those aren't rewards for weight loss, right?
No. Right.
And like,
Yes. But
so yeah, go ahead.
well, I was no, I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, it's a great example. It's just one iteration of how this shows up, like you were saying. And it's become, we take it on and wear it as if it's ours. But really, when we can slow it down, again, like if I were in that situation and I was in you know what I mean? Like, I believe I would have probably had a very different reaction than you. Like, it would have sent me spiral. Like, for you, it like, shoo, you're like, okay, I'm going to take that and I can like use that to take action.
Yeah.
And I'm a person, because of my history, I would have taken that and I would have been like, well, one more nail in the coffin as to how Molly's a fat, lazy POS and bull in a china shop, pick up the all the terrible things that were ever said. And what I'm taking from all of this, though, right, is like, we really have to slow it down if we're doing this work because there are so many hidden zingers out there for us. We don't even know the extent, I think,
Yeah,
to this internalized, right, shame piece that where we stigmatize ourselves
exactly.
and we don't even know all the ways and we can't probably know all the ways
I think
because we don't know how
unless
it's
we
happening.
start actually exploring it. And so that
Yeah.
is honestly the why we're having this conversation today.
Yeah.
There's actually an exercise that I put forward to the group that will link into
Yeah.
the show notes for people who really want to start doing some of this exploration because I feel like it's really hard to live with shame and heal from the negative aspects of shame until we understand where it came from. Because most of the people that I have conversations with around, shame is like, they'll tell me, oh, look, my life was pretty good. Like, I don't actually have that much to complain about. And then
Yeah.
once we start actually uncovering these things, we see, like, wow, you've actually been living with a lot and you've been through a lot as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such a good idea. I know for me, when I started digging into my shame, for a long time, I had this story that it was like my mom, everything was my mom.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying that's not true. I think, like, as a role as a mother, if you're going to choose to like bring children into this world, I think that, like, sorry, not sorry. Like, I've worked too long in the systems that I've worked in and had my own experiences as a child and raising my own children. I really come from this place of like, there is a level of expectation there. And here's the thing. The more I have matured and grown and done my work, what I'm realizing is that she was just parroting the messages that were out there, right? Like,
Yeah.
and some of it was her own survival. The narcissist in her, right, is just like, oh my God, this child is an extension of me. And if she looks and acts a certain way and sounds a certain way, then that's a direct reflection on me. And she couldn't bear that shame, right? Quote unquote shame.
Hmm.
But the thing that's really helped me is to realize, like, oh, she's just like another like her voice or like her message is the same as the rest of the message. And so it's really helped me to like take the sting out of that too, right? Like there wasn't this special, you know, I don't even know, evilness or whatever, right? Like it wasn't like
Hmm.
especially whatever. It's just like, oh, you're just like you're part of the peanut gallery. And because of that, it actually made it easier for me. Once I could see that, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, actually, it's easier for me to just write you off like the rest of the people that I don't actually care what they have to say. Like there was for a while there was like this, kind of like standard of like, unless you're feeding me, paying my bills, you know, in a romantic relationship with me, co-parenting with me, like unless you are any one of these like categories, I actually don't care what you have to say or think or feel about me. All of that you
Mhm.
can keep to yourselves, folks. Like those are your personal inside thoughts. But it's taken a long time to be able to get there because these things are so they're so sharp when we meet
Yeah.
them.
Well, and like as you're talking about your mom, like definitely it was my experience of my parents' shame about me having alcohol use disorder
Yeah.
and that I internalized.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until like 2 or 3 years ago where mom really was said to me, I am so sorry. Like,
Mhm.
I was working in Vancouver emergency for so long, and all I would see is these drunks
Mhm.
come in, and I absolutely thought of you and treated
Mhm.
you like that. And
Mhm.
and she, and like, so as even the parent of somebody with a substance use disorder, even though the love that a parent has, we too, she was affected
Yeah.
by the external stigma and stereotyping, probably even from colleagues about
Yeah.
these
Right.
drunks that would show up in the ER all the time. And like, what? Now my daughter's one of those. And
Mhm.
so, like, it is really challenging and really deep. And it's something that's constantly still, I think, unfolding in my own recovery journey. And so when you say this is like something that's, you know, like don't feel like people have to figure it out in 60 minutes. It feels
Yeah.
like it's been 60 years of me
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, we're only
figuring
in
this
our
out.
40s. We're only in our 40s, but it feels like it's been more decades
Yeah.
on
That
some
this
of this
this
work.
is really tough. And as much as I am trained in self-compassion therapy, and as often as we hear, I think healing from shame is really about, oh, you just have to really be self-compassionate. I don't think that's way too simplistic,
Yes.
right? Is that we hear like just love yourself or be more compassionate with yourself and or practice self-compassion, and that's so invalidating in those moments because don't
Well,
you
it's not enough, right? Like you said, it's
yeah. Yeah.
oversimplification. Like that's part of the process. And it is a very real skill. And self-compassion is the antidote to shame, but it's not the whole story.
Right, because
Yeah.
I deeply believe in self-compassion, but many people would hear those suggestions and think, I don't even know why I hate myself so much. Or another thing we heard in group was compassion feels fake sometimes, right?
Mm.
Or part of me doesn't believe I deserve compassion. And I
Yeah.
would say that makes so much sense because shame doesn't come out of nowhere, right?
Right.
Shame isn't this like personality flaw that we have.
Right.
It's a story that's been written in our lives years and years and behaviors and, sometimes decades. And
Yeah.
so it's not something that we can just easily like, when I see these things like let go of shame or release shame, like these,
Right. You're like,
self-help
oh,
things.
is it like doves that we're letting
Yeah.
go? Like let's have a dove releasing ceremony. I mean, which would be cool. And honestly, that's actually a really good idea. I really like that idea
Yeah. I would
as a
love to
comment,
be
right?
able
Like,
to
yeah,
like
yeah,
I feel like my shame would not be doves. It would be like dark bats, like bleh,
right, yeah, something. Yeah, no, I know.
or
I was
those
just thinking
like
like,
dead vultures, like, just like eating dead bodies or like crawling.
I love vultures. I'm such a
But
dark person though. Like, I really am a dark. All these things, I'm like, God, that's so lovely. Yeah,
yeah.
right. But that's so true, right? Is that like there's so much more to this than this
Right.
like frou-frou whatever feeling, and compassion in general can feel really disingenuous when it's not
When
our
there's no understanding,
well,
right?
there's no
You have
understanding,
to
but
understand it before you can have compassion for it.
well, yes and no. I mean, I do want to push on this idea a little
Oh,
bit
I'm curious.
because I think that we show up and give compassion to perfect strangers that we don't have understanding of.
Hmm. That's
I
true. And it
I
does
think
make
we
it
do.
softer. You're right.
I think
I
that we
don't
do. And so I
know.
don't know that we have to, I don't think that we always have to go to this intellectualization place first. I
Mm,
think that that often feels good because compassion has not been the default that we've received. And so
mm.
it feels disingenuous when it's happening, whether it's self-compassion, so it's us hearing our own voice with those, right, with those words, or somebody else. But I don't think that that makes it bad for us or that we shouldn't try.
No, you're right.
It's hard to
And
receive, and
right.
that's our growth edge.
Yes, and I do think if compassion can land for you, then yes, dive fully into compassion. I think if you are that other subset of people who's like, I don't even know why I hate myself so much, or like compassion really feels like so fake and like you don't deserve it, that's where I think your growth edge might be getting curious about it, right? Where did it
But
come
about
from?
that piece, but about
Right.
that piece,
About the shame, not
oh,
about the compassion.
I would say it's about the piece of getting curious around what makes it easy for me to accept the shame story as true and the compassion story as untrue.
Right, which I would say that is where did this come from? Who handed it to me? That is what I would say is understanding where shame came from.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, those are probably components of it. And certainly like everybody has to find their way through.
Hmm.
My experience is, and this is just my experience,
Yeah,
20 years, right? And a personal experience of doing this. And again, it doesn't work for everybody, and I get it. I'm one of those people where I had to go to the head first. I had to do the intellectualization first.
yeah,
I had to be the person who had cognitive behavioral therapy first for intervention. Because if you would have come at me with that stuff, I would have been like, this is woo woo BS.
yeah.
Go kick rocks. This is so inaccessible to me. I have no way to figure this out, and I'm going to fail and I'm going to be wrong. So yes, from that perspective, yes. And then I would say, after being a talk therapist, using cognitive behavioral therapy, motivational interviewing, like, the quote unquote gold standards for all these years with people, honestly, the thing that has the most impactful change is when we flip the script and we go to the more self-compassion, somatic, like when we
Yeah,
literally go to, right, the actual root
absolutely.
of it. Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree, but
Yeah.
we are doing that with them.
Yep.
I think it's
Yes.
hard to do it on our own.
Yes. Oh gosh, no. Oh
Right. Is like, so
no.
if you're like in sweet sobriety, you are
Yeah.
getting inundated with it in every
Yeah.
response
Oh
and
yeah.
even from other group members. But I think if you are somebody that's doing this work on your own, or you're doing this maybe with a one-to-one therapist,
Right.
that absolutely, cognitive may be the way in, but it
Yeah.
is going to be important for you to surround yourself with some practices that are compassionate and somatic as well.
Yeah. And that makes sense. I think the thing that I would point out here too, that makes sense like in an individual session because the attention, right? The attention is on you solely as the
Mhm.
client. That can feel bad to receive the compassion because it's so focused on you. Where
Yeah.
in a group situation, it's dispersed and
Mhm.
you can model off of like you can watch other people receive it and be like, "Oh, nothing bad happened," or
Mhm.
the coach's response was blah 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 to them. It could be that way for me too, right? So like there's some like different experiences when we do it that way. So again, from that individual, but we've talked in group multiple times about the receiving part of it. The like when we say like my experience of you is this, right? And
Mhm.
they have a really hard time.
Yeah, they
um
cringe.
yeah, right. And they get very mad actually.
Yeah,
There's a lot of
sometimes,
anger
yeah.
that shows up. That
Pushback.
protection of like, yes, of like, who do you think you are? You don't know me. And I'm like, you're literally trying to convince me that you're a bad person? Like this is interesting. Right? So again,
Mhm.
like to come back to that shame piece of like we have so internalized that we are bad, we are broken, we are fundamentally yuck, right? Like that there's no redeeming quality about us. Like that is so deep sometimes.
Right. And shame can be, again, that protective strategy that you're talking about, right? It's like,
Mhm.
so if shame says to me, don't speak up, that's probably because I spoke up one time and then I got hurt.
Right.
Or if it's like, don't trust people, it's probably because I did trust people and that trust was violated at some time. Or if shame is telling me stay small, that's probably because I put myself up on stage to play the piano and I forgot everything. And then I ran off the stage crying, and my parents were like, this, oh, Clarissa. So I stopped playing the piano, right? It's like
Yeah.
it was a protective
Yeah.
mechanism. And I also want to say there is going to be some of us who are far more vulnerable to
Yeah.
shame than others. And
Yeah.
so if we do have a lot of empaths, and we certainly obviously do in sweet sobriety, and we have people who are tend to be those HSPs or highly
Yeah.
sensitive people, we will be looking and monitoring for any verbal cues or nonverbal cues
Yeah.
or looks or, safety all the time we're looking for. And if like we see that we are not accepted, then that can be in its own a shaming experience for us.
Yeah, right. Well, and like you said, we're wired for that. Again, like
Mhm.
our internal alarm system is always scanning for danger. The unfortunate part then is that like that becomes confirmation bias of like, oh, that person, the look on their face or the tone in
Yeah.
their voice, or it wasn't as warm or as long as the last person got from the right. So if we're always looking for that, which again, you're wired for, so the work would be like intentionally to show up and like get curious about it. Like, is that
Hmm.
true? Is Clarissa really spending more time with this person than she is with her response to me, whatever? Because we can write that story then, and that shame can show back up. And then it, like you said, it's protective and it is protective. And at times it's adaptive and at other times it's maladaptive, right? So sometimes it's really helpful and healthy and productive for us. And other times it can keep us stuck. It can move us backwards. It can, we regress emotionally in those moments because then it's like we've written this story of like, yep, there it is. This is exactly it. I already knew she can't stand me. So she's not giving me any time and attention. Right. And I
Hmm.
say that giggling only because it's like my nervous laughter. I'm fully aware I do this at times, right?
Yeah.
With my own self in
Yep.
situations where I'm like, oh, interesting. Like in the moment I can't see it, but afterwards I'm like, oh geez, there it was. What was that about? So like again, always giving yourself permission to slow it down. You do not have to figure this out today. And so many of us know that shame is like you said, it's so hard to shame
Yeah,
some
it's my
people.
default mechanism,
Yeah,
it's
it's very
like
easy for some of us.
I
Yeah.
say the wrong thing. Like if I was in group and I said the wrong thing, I'd be like, oh, they think I'm an idiot,
Yeah.
or like it would be, I am so much better now, but it was always my first go-to was like nothing, I could never make a mistake. It was never like I did a bad behavior or I made a mistake. It was always like I am a bad person. And
Right.
so like to be 46 and come leaps and bounds in this and be able to be curious about it. I think that's the biggest piece, right? To start with
Yeah.
is what you said, that curiosity, and also just starting with like noticing and naming when it shows up, who it shows up with, what
Yeah.
environments does it show up? Is it like work? Is it relationship? And
Yeah.
like sometimes that may be a level of dysregulation that's also going on, and like understanding, I think for me anyways, it is, oh, this comes from this, and so this
Yeah.
makes sense in this situation that it might be. And what you're not hearing us say is that we have to get rid of it. We're just asking
Yeah.
individuals and listeners to make room for it, right? Is
Yep.
that we're going to, like, shame kind of sits beside me now. I
Yeah.
observe it, I notice it, I understand its history, I recognize when it shows up. And often I'm like asking it a question is like, whose voice is my shame speaking in? And
Yeah.
it's often like inherited, it's absorbed, it's never really my own language. It was just something that was maybe repeated to me
Yep.
over time. And then once I realized like this didn't start with me, it feels like it's a lot easier to let it go. But the compassion piece is also what makes my ability to be a human and make mistakes all the time okay now.
Right. Yeah. And I love that you mentioned that because I don't know. Again, there are people, I think about some people in my life who maybe, their brains just operate so differently. Like their brains are so literal. And my brain it has more ebbs and flows than just like it's so literal. And so you're right, like that then makes us more highly sensitive to these kinds of things. And I agree, like I don't know that shame sits beside me, but it is a part that
Hmm.
I have learned to collaborate with. I
Mm.
don't I don't always have to like it. In fact, I don't know that I like shame at all, but I'm willing to collaborate. Like I can have a professional relationship with my shame. And and I can I love that you're laughing at me, but it's true. I can. Like I can have a professional
Oh, I
relationship
like
with my
it.
shame and collaborate and go like, like, hey, I hear you making loud noises over there, shame, about this
Mm.
thing. Let me check in. Is this actually something that I need to carry, or is this something that I'm working to let go of? Because you're right, there are some things where it might show up in it. The extreme version of it probably isn't valid, but there may be something in there where it's like, this is my growth edge. And
Hmm.
can I address that from a place of curiosity instead of just like deciding the shame story is the truth, the only truth, so help us all. Like it doesn't have to be like that. But I agree. I mean, you saying that, I was like, oh yeah, I guess I kind of do that too, just like my darker parts of me that I used
Hmm.
to really hate and try to like shove again because of shame. Now I'm just like, actually I love those parts of me. They are not always awesome, right? Like especially if you're on the receiving end of it,
Yeah.
but but they all serve a purpose, and shame does too. Not that we should go out and shame people, and not that it's okay that people have shamed us, but that we can take it and we can leverage it for our own benefit once we can let go of the stories around it.
Yes. Yes. I love it. I think this was
Yeah.
I hope this was a helpful conversation for everyone today. And again, like we said, we're going to be releasing Liberation sometime in September. And so there will be multiple modules on shame and diving into it and some exercises around it. And yeah, what you're not hearing us today is that we are free from it.
Yeah. No,
That's
no.
not what we mean by liberation. It's about learning to live with and accepting that it's one part of us, and to just make sure that it is not getting in the way of us living our values and putting our life on hold until we wait until it goes away.
Right. Right. Until I'm thin enough, until I'm pretty
Yeah,
enough, until I'm
until
smart enough,
my
until whatever
addiction
those
is
things are.
cured and
Right. Right. Until I'm sober enough. Not whatever. No, your life is happening right now.
yeah,
So get in there and live it, you know, get in there and live it, whatever that means. And yeah, you don't, to your point, Clarissa, like you don't have to do it alone. If you are a person who's listening to this and you've tried to do it alone and you're like, okay, this is not working. I've tried to work on shame and whatever, like reach out. We're
yeah,
happy to like have a consultation with you or give you some ideas of where to look. Again, like I don't care if people work with us or not. But if there's something I can do to support you in getting the help that you do need, I would love to do that for you. I'm happy to offer that.
beautiful. Well, and we also want to know what you want to hear more about. So you can
Yeah.
email us at
foodjunkiespodcast@gmail.com.
awesome, and we will see you next month. Bye,
Yay.
everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us this week on Food Junkies Recovery from Food Addiction. Make sure to join our Facebook group, Sugar Free for Life Support Group. I'm Sweet Enough. Molly and Clarissa are food addiction professionals who offer one-to-one counseling and group coaching through Sweet Sobriety. Please subscribe to our show so you never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in today's episode, we'd appreciate you leaving us a review on your favorite platform. Your feedback helps grow our show and allows us to reach others who need to hear this message of recovery. Don't forget to pick up a copy of Dr. Tarman's book, Food Junkies. And as Vera always says, the power is ours.